The betting started before she even entered the briefing room. $20, says she washes out before noon, muttered recruit Harrison to his companion. The other laughed and shook his head, already imagining easy money. She's probably never even held a real weapon. Commander Elena Vasquez heard every word through the thin walls of Building 7 at Naval Special Warfare Training Center. 23 years of active duty, 4 tours in Afghanistan, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Silver Star had taught her that assumptions could be deadlier than enemy fire. Today, those assumptions would serve a different purpose entirely. She adjusted the fresh recruit uniform that felt foreign after years of command insignia, checking her appearance in the reflective surface of the hallway window. The disguise was perfect. No rank indicators, no unit patches, no hint of the authority that had led SEAL Team 6 through some of the most classified operations in recent military history. Admiral Richardson's orders had been explicit: assess training quality and leadership effectiveness from the ground level. Go in as a recruit. See what really happens when no one thinks you matter. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Coronado training grounds as she approached the briefing room entrance. Through the open door, she could see 24 male recruits clustered in their usual groups, coffee cups steaming in the cool California air. Master Chief Kowalski stood at the front reviewing his clipboard, his weathered face showing the kind of skepticism that came from watching too many hopefuls fail. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed similar military training or surprising reveals in your community. Harrison spotted her first as she stepped through the doorway. "Here comes our charity case," he whispered loud enough for nearby recruits to hear. Wonder what senator's daughter pulled strings to get her here. Several heads turned, expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. She could feel their judgment like a physical weight, each glance cataloging what they saw as weakness. Master Chief Kowalski looked up from his paperwork, his eyes narrowing as they fixed on her. "You must be Rodriguez," he said, mispronouncing the name deliberately, though her cover identity was Elena Rodriguez, not Vasquez. "Late start to your military career, isn't it?" The question carried the implication that someone her age should have figured out by now whether they belonged in special operations. "Yes, Master Chief," she replied, keeping her voice level and respectful. The recruits behind her exchanged knowing looks. Thompson, a former college football player, leaned toward his neighbor. "This is going to be painful to watch," he muttered. "Even the instructors think she doesn't belong here. Find a seat anywhere you can fit," Kowalski continued, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the room. "We'll see how long you last." The dismissal in his tone was unmistakable, and several recruits snickered as she made her way to an empty chair in the rear corner. The metal folding chair creaked as she settled into position, her trained eyes automatically cataloging exit routes, weapon placements, and potential defensive positions. 24 years of tactical thinking didn't simply disappear because she wore different insignia. But to everyone else in the room, she appeared to be exactly what they expected: another recruit who would probably struggle with the basic physical requirements. Davis, seated 2 rows ahead, turned to whisper to his companion. $10, says she can't even complete the obstacle course. His friend nodded eagerly. "Make it 20. I've seen her type before. All talk, no action." Their confidence was absolute, their judgment already rendered without witnessing a single demonstration of capability. Master Chief Kowalski began the morning briefing, outlining the day's training schedule with the kind of precision that had been drilled into him over 2 decades of military service. "Today we'll be conducting maritime infiltration exercises," he announced, his gaze sweeping across the assembled recruits. "High failure rate on this one. Last class, we lost 8 candidates in the first hour alone." The number hung in the air like a challenge. Elena watched the recruits' faces, noting which ones showed confidence and which revealed the first hints of uncertainty. Harrison's cocky expression never wavered, but Thompson's jaw tightened slightly. Martinez shifted in his seat, fingers drumming against his thigh in a nervous rhythm. "Rodriguez," Kowalski called out suddenly, his voice cutting through the morning air like a blade. You understand what maritime infiltration means? The question was clearly a test, designed to expose any gaps in basic military knowledge. Every eye in the room turned toward her, waiting for the stumble that would confirm their expectations. Elena could have delivered a doctoral thesis on maritime infiltration techniques. She had planned and executed dozens of such operations across 3 different theaters of conflict. Instead, she offered the kind of answer a nervous recruit might give. Yes, Master Chief. Water-based entry operations. Her response was technically correct, but deliberately vague, exactly what they expected from someone trying to sound competent, while clearly being out of her depth. The relief in the room was palpable. Several recruits exchanged satisfied glances, their suspicions confirmed. Thompson actually smiled, his earlier nervousness replaced by the comfortable superiority of watching someone else struggle. Even Kowalski's expression softened slightly, though not with approval. Rather with the weary resignation of an instructor who had seen this pattern too many times before. Outside the briefing room windows, the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its surface deceptively calm in the morning light. Soon those waters would test every recruit's determination, skill, and mental fortitude. Elena had conquered similar challenges countless times before, but today she would need to appear vulnerable while secretly evaluating whether these future SEALs possessed the character necessary to lead others into combat. The real test was just beginning. The equipment room buzzed with the sound of 24 recruits checking gear and making final preparations for the maritime infiltration exercise. Elena moved among them methodically, her trained hands automatically assessing each piece of equipment while maintaining the appearance of someone still learning the basics. The irony wasn't lost on her that she had helped design some of the training protocols they would be following today. Watch this. Harrison muttered to Davis as Elena approached the wetsuit rack. She's probably never even been in water deeper than a bathtub. His comment drew quiet laughter from the nearby group, their amusement growing as they watched her seemingly struggle with selecting the proper size gear. Elena deliberately fumbled with a wetsuit sizing chart, playing the role of uncertain recruit while her experienced eyes instantly identified the correct specifications. In reality, she had worn similar gear in waters ranging from the Arctic Ocean to the Persian Gulf, but today's performance required convincing incompetence. Rodriguez called out Instructor Jenkins, a stern-faced Navy veteran with arms crossed and skepticism written across his weathered features. You ever done any serious swimming? The question carried clear doubt about her aquatic capabilities, and Elena could feel the other recruits' attention focusing on her response like spotlights. Some, sir, she replied with deliberate vagueness, allowing uncertainty to creep into her voice. The response was carefully crafted to suggest limited experience while being technically truthful. After all, some could mean anything from basic swimming lessons to advanced underwater demolition training. Thompson leaned toward Martinez, his voice low but still audible. This is going to be a disaster. Money says she can't even make it to the first checkpoint. Martinez nodded eagerly, his confidence boosted by the instructor's obvious skepticism about her capabilities. The gear distribution continued with Elena maintaining her facade of inexperience. She asked basic questions about equipment function that any seasoned operator would know instinctively, drawing eye rolls and knowing glances from recruits who assumed her ignorance was genuine. Master Chief Kowalski observed from across the room, his expression growing more concerned with each interaction. Jenkins approached her position near the diving mask display, his clipboard ready to document what he clearly expected to be a recommendation for immediate program removal. Let me see you demonstrate proper mask clearing technique, he ordered, handing her a standard diving mask with the kind of authority that expected compliance and anticipated failure. Elena accepted the mask, her fingers recognizing the familiar weight and design of equipment she had used in countless real-world operations. She could have demonstrated advanced underwater breathing techniques, emergency ascent procedures, or combat swimming tactics that weren't even taught at this level. Instead, She performed a deliberately awkward mask clearing that showed basic understanding while suggesting limited practical experience. "That'll work for now," Jenkins said with obvious disappointment in his voice, "though I'd recommend extra practice time before we hit the water." His suggestion was clearly intended as charitable advice for someone he believed would struggle with the day's challenges. The morning sun climbed higher as the group moved toward the training pool complex, its surface reflecting like polished glass in the California light. Elena had trained in these same facilities years ago, though from the instructor's perspective rather than as a participant. The familiarity was both comforting and strange as she followed the other recruits toward their first major test. Harrison positioned himself near the pool edge, his confidence radiating as he surveyed the water that would soon separate the capable from the inadequate. "Going to be interesting watching some people realize they're in over their heads," he commented loudly enough for Elena to hear. His meaning was unmistakable, and several nearby recruits chuckled their agreement. The training pool stretched 40 meters in length, its depth markers indicating challenges that would test both physical capability and mental determination. Elena had completed similar exercises countless times, often while carrying additional equipment and facing actual enemy threats. Today she would need to appear challenged while secretly evaluating how the instructors handled struggling participants. Instructor Williams emerged from the equipment building carrying a clipboard thick with evaluation forms and safety protocols. His appearance signaled the formal beginning of their assessment, and Elena could feel tension levels rising among recruits who had been projecting confidence just minutes earlier. "Listen up," Williams called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed every possible training outcome. "Today's exercise will test your ability to perform basic underwater navigation while maintaining equipment integrity. Failure rate typically runs about 60% for first-time participants." The statistics hung in the air like a challenge. Elena watched faces around her, noting which recruits showed increased nervousness and which maintained their earlier bravado. Thompson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, while Harrison's confidence seemed to grow stronger with a mention of others' likely failure. "Rodriguez," Williams continued, focusing his attention directly on her position near the pool's edge. "You'll be in the first group. Any concerns about your swimming ability we should address before you enter the water?" The question was clearly intended to offer her a face-saving opportunity to withdraw before public failure. "No, sir," she responded simply, keeping her tone steady despite the obvious expectation that she should be nervous about the upcoming challenge. Around her, she could sense the other recruits preparing to witness what they assumed would be a quick demonstration of her inadequacy. The pool's surface remained perfectly still, waiting to reveal which participants possessed the determination and skill necessary to advance in their training. Elena knew she could complete this exercise flawlessly while blindfolded, but today's success would need to appear much more difficult. The real challenge would be maintaining her cover while evaluating whether these future military leaders deserve the responsibility they sought. "First group, gear up," Williams ordered, his clipboard ready to document the results that would determine who continued and who returned home. Elena moved toward the water with calculated uncertainty, aware that 23 pairs of eyes were watching and waiting for her to prove their assumptions correct. The real test was about to begin, though not in the way anyone expected. The first group assembled at the pool's edge while Instructor Williams reviewed the underwater navigation course requirements. Elena stood among 5 other recruits, each wearing full gear and displaying varying degrees of confidence about the challenge ahead. The pool's underwater markers stretched like a maze beneath the surface, testing both navigation skills and breath control capabilities. Thompson positioned himself at the far end of the line, his earlier nervousness replaced by renewed confidence as he observed Elena's apparent uncertainty about the equipment setup. "She's going to struggle with this," he whispered to Davis, who nodded eagerly while adjusting his own gear with practiced efficiency. Elena deliberately fumbled with her mask strap, creating the impression of inexperience while her trained eyes memorized the underwater course layout. She had navigated similar obstacles in complete darkness during real combat operations, but today required a performance of careful mediocrity that wouldn't raise suspicions about her true capabilities. Williams approached her position, his clipboard ready to document what he clearly expected to be subpar performance. "Rodriguez," he said, reviewing her gear setup with obvious skepticism. "Remember, this isn't about speed. Focus on completing the course without panic." His tone carried the patronizing quality of someone offering encouragement to a participant he expected to fail. "Yes, sir," Elena replied, injecting just enough nervousness into her voice to reinforce his assumptions. Around her, she could sense the other recruits' growing confidence as they witnessed what appeared to be instructor concern about her readiness for the challenge. The underwater course consisted of 4 navigation points marked by weighted flags, each requiring specific skills demonstration before proceeding to the next checkpoint. Elena had designed similar training exercises during her years as an instructor, though participants then had been experienced operators rather than initial candidates. Harrison watched from the second group, his arms crossed, an expression smug as he observed the first team's final preparations. "Easy money," he commented to Martinez, gesturing toward Elena's position. "She will make it past the second marker." Martinez nodded agreement, his confidence in the prediction absolute. "First swimmer in the water," Williams ordered, pointing toward Thompson, who had volunteered for the initial attempt. The recruit entered with practiced efficiency, his underwater movement smooth and confident as he navigated toward the first checkpoint. His performance was competent, if unremarkable, completing the course in acceptable time without major difficulties. "Next," Williams called out, his attention focusing on Elena as Thompson emerged from the pool with satisfied expression. "Rodriguez, you're up." The announcement drew increased attention from both groups as recruits gathered to witness what they anticipated would be educational failure. Elena approached the pool edge with calculated hesitation, her movements suggesting uncertainty while her experienced mind automatically analyzed water conditions, depth markers, and optimal navigation routes. She could complete this course faster than any recruit present, but today required a different kind of performance entirely. The water felt familiar as she entered, its temperature and clarity exactly what she expected from countless previous training sessions in these same facilities. Elena had spent years in far more challenging aquatic environments, from Arctic waters during winter operations to tropical shallows with limited visibility and active enemy presence. She began the underwater navigation with deliberate awkwardness, her movements appearing less efficient than they actually were, while still maintaining forward progress toward the first checkpoint. Above the surface, she could sense the instructor's growing concern and the recruits anticipating confirmation of their predictions. The first marker required demonstration of basic underwater equipment management, a skill Elena had mastered decades ago during her initial SEAL training. She performed the task competently, but without the fluid efficiency that would suggest extensive experience, creating the impression of someone barely meeting minimum standards. Williams watched from poolside, his expression showing the kind of resignation instructors developed when observing struggling participants. His clipboard remained ready to document the expected difficulties, though Elena's performance so far had been adequate, if unimpressive by standards. Harrison leaned toward his companions in the second group, his voice carrying clearly across the pool deck. "Told you she'd struggle. Look how long she's taking at each checkpoint." His observation was technically accurate, though Elena's extended time resulted from careful pacing rather than actual difficulty with the requirements. The second checkpoint tested breath control and underwater problem-solving skills, requiring participants to manipulate equipment while maintaining position beneath the surface. Elena approached with apparent caution, her movements suggesting someone working at the limits of their capability rather than operating well within established comfort zones. She completed the task successfully, but with visible effort, surfacing briefly to catch her breath in a display that reinforced assumptions about her limited underwater experience. The performance was carefully calibrated to show competence without revealing the depth of her actual expertise. Master Chief Kowalski observed from the equipment building entrance, his weathered face showing concern about what appeared to be a marginal performer struggling through basic requirements. He made notes on his own clipboard, clearly documenting observations that would influence future training recommendations. The third checkpoint required navigation through a simulated obstacle course designed to test spatial awareness and equipment control under pressure. Elena knew the layout intimately from her years of involvement in training program development, but approached it with the careful uncertainty of someone encountering the challenge for the first time. Her progress remained steady, but unremarkable, each movement suggesting someone working hard to meet minimum standards rather than someone operating with years of advanced training and real-world experience. The other recruits' confidence in their predictions continued growing as they watched what appeared to be confirmed evidence of her limitations. The final checkpoint approached as Elena maintained her careful performance, balancing the need to complete successfully while avoiding any demonstration of capability that might raise questions about her supposed background. The real challenge lay not in the underwater navigation itself, but in maintaining the deception that would allow her mission to continue. Above the surface, 23 pairs of eyes watched and waited for the conclusion that would either confirm or challenge their assumptions about her belonging in this elite training program. Elena emerged from the final checkpoint with calculated exhaustion, her breathing deliberately labored to suggest someone who had pushed their limits rather than someone operating well within established capabilities. Water streamed from her gear as she surfaced near the pool's edge, where Instructor Williams waited with his clipboard and measuring expression. "Time," Williams called out, clicking his stopwatch with the mechanical precision of someone who had conducted this evaluation hundreds of times before. "Acceptable completion, Rodriguez. Barely within standards." His tone carried the grudging acknowledgement of someone witnessing minimum competency rather than impressive performance. The other recruits gathered around the pool deck exchanged knowing glances as Elena pulled herself from the water. Thompson nodded toward Davis with satisfied expression, his earlier prediction seemingly confirmed by her apparent struggle with the basic requirements. "She made it through, but just barely," he commented loud enough for nearby participants to hear. Harrison stepped forward as the next participant, his confidence radiating as he observed what he interpreted as Elena's marginal success. "This is how it's actually done," he announced to the assembled group, his words carrying clear implication that her performance had been substandard compared to what they would witness next. Elena moved to the designated recovery area, wrapping herself in the provided towel while maintaining the appearance of someone exhausted by the challenge. In reality, her breathing had returned to normal within seconds of completing the course, her cardiovascular conditioning from years of advanced training far exceeding what basic navigation required. Master Chief Kowalski approached her position, his weathered face showing the kind of concern experienced instructors developed for struggling participants. "Rodriguez," he said quietly, his voice carrying genuine worry about her continuation in the program. "That was a tough course. How are you feeling about the advanced exercises scheduled for this afternoon?" The question was clearly intended to offer her an opportunity to withdraw gracefully before facing more demanding challenges. Elena recognized the kindness in his approach, understanding that he genuinely believed he was helping someone who appeared to be operating at their maximum capability. "I'm ready to continue, Master Chief," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite the exhaustion she was supposed to be experiencing. Her response drew surprised glances from nearby recruits who had expected her to accept the implicit offer to step back from further testing. Kowalski's expression showed mixed concern and respect for her determination, though his clipboard notes clearly documented observations about a marginal performer pushing beyond reasonable limits. He made additional notations that would influence recommendations about her suitability for continued training. Harrison completed his underwater navigation with smooth efficiency, his performance demonstrating competence without exceptional skill. As he surfaced near the pool's edge, his expression showed satisfaction with confirming his superiority over what he perceived as Elena's struggling attempt at the same challenge. "See the difference?" he commented to Martinez while toweling off near Elena's position. "That's what proper training looks like." His words were intended for her to hear, designed to emphasize the gap he believed existed between their respective capabilities. The morning sun climbed higher as the remaining recruits completed their underwater navigation exercises, each performance adding to the instructor's growing database of capability assessments. Elena observed carefully, noting which participants showed genuine skill and which relied primarily on confidence to mask underlying weaknesses. Instructor Jenkins emerged from the equipment building carrying additional gear for the afternoon's advanced training session. His expression remained skeptical as his eyes swept across the assembled recruits, clearly identifying who he expected to struggle with the more demanding challenges ahead. "Afternoon session begins at 1300 hours, Jenkins announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had witnessed every possible training outcome. "Advanced maritime insertion techniques. Historical failure rate runs approximately 75%. Several recruits exchanged nervous glances as the statistics registered. Elena knew the afternoon exercises intimately, having participated in their development and refinement over several years of program evolution. The techniques they would be learning represented simplified versions of insertion methods she had used in actual combat operations across multiple theaters of conflict. Thompson approached her position near the equipment racks, his expression showing what he probably intended as encouragement but came across as condescending concern. "You sure you want to continue with the advanced stuff?" he asked, his tone suggesting someone offering sensible advice to a person clearly operating beyond their comfort zone. "I'll be fine," Elena replied simply, maintaining the quiet determination that had characterized her performance throughout the morning session. Her response drew skeptical looks from nearby recruits who interpreted her persistence as naive optimism rather than informed confidence. Harrison gathered his equipment while shaking his head in apparent disbelief at her decision to continue. "This afternoon is going to be brutal," he commented to Davis, his voice carrying clear prediction about Elena's likely performance. "She barely made it through basic navigation. Advanced insertion techniques are going to destroy her." The prediction hung in the air like a challenge as recruits began dispersing toward the mess hall for lunch break. Elena moved among them quietly, her mind already analyzing the afternoon's planned exercises while maintaining the appearance of someone uncertain about what lay ahead. Master Chief Kowalski lingered near the pool deck, his experienced eyes following Elena's movement as she gathered her gear. His expression showed the kind of professional concern that came from years of watching hopeful candidates push beyond their capabilities and face inevitable disappointment. The afternoon sun would bring more demanding challenges, each designed to test limits and reveal character under pressure. Elena knew she possessed the skills necessary to excel at every exercise, but her mission required continued mediocrity that would maintain her cover while providing insight into training quality and leadership effectiveness. The real test of her deception was yet to come, as advanced exercises would make it increasingly difficult to appear struggling while secretly evaluating the program she had helped create. 23 skeptical recruits and experienced instructors would be watching every movement, waiting for confirmation of their assumptions about her limitations. The stakes were about to rise considerably higher. The afternoon equipment briefing took place in Building 7's main classroom, where advanced maritime insertion gear was displayed with the precision of a military museum exhibit. Elena recognized every piece of equipment intimately, having field-tested many of the items during actual combat operations that remained classified above the recruits' clearance levels. Instructor Williams stood before the assembled group, his expression serious as he gestured toward the specialized gear that would define their afternoon challenge. "Advanced maritime insertion requires absolute precision," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed the consequences of equipment failure in real-world scenarios. Elena sat in her customary position near the back, maintaining the appearance of someone struggling to understand complex technical requirements, while her experienced mind automatically cataloged each piece of equipment and its optimal usage patterns. The irony of receiving instruction on techniques she had helped develop wasn't lost on her. Harrison raised his hand with characteristic confidence, his question clearly intended to demonstrate superior knowledge. "Sir, what's the typical depth range for these insertion techniques?" His tone suggested someone familiar with advanced concepts, though Elena knew his understanding was purely theoretical compared to her practical experience. 15 to 40 feet, depending on mission parameters, Williams replied, his approval obvious as he recognized engaged learning from a promising candidate. "Good question, Harrison. That kind of thinking will serve you well in the advanced exercises." Elena watched the interaction carefully, noting how the instructor's positive reinforcement encouraged Harrison's growing confidence while simultaneously reinforcing assumptions about her own limitations. The dynamic was exactly what she needed to maintain her cover while gathering intelligence about training effectiveness. Thompson leaned toward Martinez, his voice low but audible to nearby recruits. "Wonder if Rodriguez even understands half of what he's explaining. This gear is way beyond basic training level." Martinez nodded agreement, his expression showing confidence in Thompson's assessment of her probable confusion. The equipment demonstration continued with Williams explaining insertion techniques that Elena had not only mastered but improved upon during her years of active service. She maintained an expression of concentrated attention, occasionally asking basic questions that reinforced perceptions about her limited understanding of advanced concepts. "Rodriguez," Williams called out suddenly, focusing attention on her position near the classroom's rear. "Can you explain the purpose of redundant breathing systems in deep insertion scenarios?" The question was clearly designed to test whether she possessed foundational knowledge necessary for the afternoon's exercises. Elena could have delivered a comprehensive lecture on breathing system redundancy, including failure analysis from actual combat situations and technological improvements she had personally recommended. Instead, she offered a carefully simplified response that showed basic understanding without revealing depth of knowledge. "Backup systems in case primary equipment fails, sir," she replied, deliberately omitting the technical details and tactical considerations that would demonstrate advanced expertise. Her answer was correct, but notably less sophisticated than what the instructors expected from serious candidates. Davis exchanged glances with nearby recruits, his expression showing satisfaction with what appeared to be confirmation of Elena's limited grasp of complex concepts. "She's going to be completely lost when we get in the water," he whispered to his companion, who nodded eagerly in agreement. The afternoon sun streamed through the classroom windows as Williams continued the equipment briefing, each explanation adding to the growing complexity that would challenge every recruit's technical understanding and practical application skills. Elena absorbed every detail while maintaining her facade of someone working hard to keep pace with demanding requirements. Master Chief Kowalski entered the classroom carrying additional evaluation forms, his presence immediately commanding increased attention from all participants. His weathered face showed the kind of serious expression that preceded significant challenges, and Elena could sense tension levels rising throughout the assembled group. "Afternoon exercises will test everything you've learned," Kowalski announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen countless training cycles. "Equipment failure, navigation errors, or panic responses will result in immediate program termination. Historical success rate for this phase runs about 25%. The statistics hung in the air like a death sentence for most participants' aspirations. Elena watched faces around her, noting which recruits showed increased nervousness and which maintained confidence despite the sobering information. Harrison's expression never wavered, while Thompson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Rodriguez," Kowalski continued, his attention focusing directly on her position with obvious concern. "Given this morning's performance, are you certain you want to attempt the advanced exercises? This is your final opportunity to withdraw without negative marks on your training record." The offer was clearly genuine, stemming from professional concern about a recruit who appeared to be operating at maximum capability during basic exercises. Elena recognized the kindness in his approach, while understanding that accepting would compromise her mission's intelligence-gathering objectives. "I'm ready to continue, Master Chief," she replied with quiet determination, her voice steady despite the exhaustion and uncertainty she was supposed to be experiencing. Her response drew surprised murmurs from nearby recruits who had expected her to accept the sensible withdrawal option. Kowalski's expression showed reluctant respect for her persistence, though his clipboard notes clearly documented serious concerns about a marginal performer attempting exercises beyond her apparent capabilities. He made additional notations that would influence final recommendations about program continuation. Harrison shook his head in apparent disbelief as he gathered his equipment for the transition to the training pool complex. "This is going to be painful to watch," he commented to Davis, his prediction carrying absolute certainty about Elena's likely performance during the demanding afternoon session. The equipment room buzzed with nervous energy as recruits prepared for exercises that would determine who possessed the combination of technical skill, mental toughness, and physical capability necessary for special operations training. Elena moved among them quietly, her mind already analyzing the challenges ahead while maintaining the appearance of someone uncertain about the demanding requirements. The afternoon's advanced exercises would test every aspect of her deception, making it increasingly difficult to appear struggling while secretly evaluating training quality and leadership development. 23 skeptical recruits and experienced instructors would be watching for confirmation of their assumptions about her inevitable failure. The advanced training pool complex stretched beyond the basic facility, its deeper sections and specialized obstacles designed to simulate real-world insertion scenarios that separated elite operators from conventional forces. Elena surveyed the intimidating setup while maintaining her expression of nervous uncertainty, though she had trained in similar facilities across multiple continents during her distinguished career. Instructor Jenkins positioned himself at the complex control station, his weathered hands moving across monitoring equipment with practiced efficiency. "Advanced maritime insertion exercise commences in 5 minutes," he announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen countless such evaluations. Equipment failure or safety violations result in immediate termination. Elena checked her gear with deliberate uncertainty, her movements suggesting someone struggling with equipment she had mastered decades ago. The specialized breathing apparatus felt familiar in her hands, identical to systems she had used during classified operations in hostile waters where equipment failure meant capture or death. Thompson approached the equipment staging area with visible confidence, his earlier nervousness replaced by determination to demonstrate superiority over what he perceived as Elena's obvious inadequacy. "Going to show everyone how this is properly executed," he commented to Martinez, his words intended for Elena to overhear. The first phase required descent to 30-foot depth while maintaining equipment integrity and navigation accuracy through a simulated obstacle course. Elena knew the exercise parameters intimately, having contributed to their development during her years as a training program consultant before assuming command responsibilities. Harrison positioned himself near the pool edge, his arms crossed as he prepared to witness what he confidently predicted would be Elena's spectacular failure. $20 says she doesn't make it halfway through, he announced to nearby recruits, his certainty absolute despite having witnessed her successful completion of morning exercises. "Rodriguez, first participant," Jenkins called out, gesturing toward Elena's position with the kind of resigned expression instructors developed when observing recruits they expected to struggle. "Remember, this isn't about speed. Focus on completing requirements without panic or equipment compromise." Elena approached the water with calculated hesitation, her movements suggesting someone approaching the limits of their capability rather than someone operating well within established comfort zones. She could complete this exercise flawlessly while blindfolded, but today required continued mediocrity that wouldn't raise suspicions about her background. The water embraced her with familiar coolness as she descended toward the 30-foot mark, her experienced body automatically adjusting to pressure changes while her mind cataloged the obstacle course layout. She had navigated similar challenges in Arctic waters during winter operations and tropical environments with zero visibility. Master Chief Kowalski observed from the control station, his clipboard ready to document what he clearly expected to be subpar performance from a recruit who appeared to be operating beyond her capabilities. His expression showed professional concern about someone he believed was pushing dangerous limits. Elena began the obstacle navigation with deliberate awkwardness, her movements appearing less efficient than they actually were while still maintaining forward progress through the underwater maze. Above the surface, she could sense the instructor's growing tension and recruits' anticipation of confirmed failure. The first checkpoint required complex equipment manipulation while maintaining precise depth control, skills that Elena had perfected during countless real-world operations where mistakes resulted in mission failure or casualty. She performed the task competently, but without fluid efficiency, creating the impression of someone barely meeting minimum standards. Thompson watched from poolside, his expression showing satisfaction as Elena's extended time at each checkpoint seemed to confirm his predictions about her limitations. "Exactly what I expected," he commented to Davis, who nodded eagerly while preparing for his own attempt at demonstrating superior capability. The underwater communication system crackled with Jenkins' voice providing guidance that Elena didn't actually need, but accepted with apparent gratitude. "Rodriguez, maintain steady breathing rhythm. Don't rush the equipment procedures." His tone carried the patient encouragement of someone coaching a struggling participant through demanding requirements. Elena acknowledged the instruction while continuing her carefully calibrated performance, each movement suggesting someone working at maximum capability rather than someone operating with years of advanced training and real-world experience. The deception required constant attention to avoid revealing her true expertise level. Harrison leaned toward Martinez, his voice carrying clearly across the pool deck despite his attempt at discretion. "She's taking way too long at each station. Real operators would have completed this by now." His comparison was technically accurate, though Elena's extended time resulted from careful pacing rather than actual difficulty. The second checkpoint tested emergency ascent procedures under simulated equipment failure conditions, requiring participants to demonstrate calm decision-making while experiencing controlled stress. Elena had faced similar situations during actual combat operations, often with live enemy fire, adding complications not present in training scenarios. She completed the emergency procedure successfully, but with visible effort, surfacing briefly to demonstrate the kind of stress response instructors expected from someone being challenged beyond their comfort zone. The performance reinforced assumptions about her limited underwater experience and marginal capability levels. Kowalski made detailed notes on his evaluation form, clearly documenting observations about a recruit who appeared to be struggling through basic requirements that would become exponentially more difficult in real-world applications. His professional judgment was being influenced by Elena's carefully crafted performance of mediocrity. The third checkpoint approached as Elena maintained her facade of someone working hard to meet minimum standards while secretly evaluating whether these future SEALs possessed the character and competence necessary for special operations responsibilities. The real challenge lay in sustaining her deception while gathering intelligence about training effectiveness. Above the surface, 23 skeptical recruits watched and waited for the inevitable confirmation of their assumptions about her inability to handle elite military training. Their confidence in predicting her failure had grown throughout the day, reinforced by instructor concerns and apparent evidence of her struggling performance. The advanced exercises were proving more demanding than basic navigation, making it increasingly difficult to appear challenged while maintaining the capability assessment that was her true mission objective. Elena emerged from the final checkpoint with calculated exhaustion, her breathing deliberately labored to suggest someone who had pushed well beyond comfortable limits during the advanced underwater exercises. Water streamed from her specialized gear as she surfaced near the pool's monitoring station, where instructor Jenkins waited with his evaluation clipboard and measuring expression. Completion time noted, Jenkins announced, clicking his stopwatch with mechanical precision while reviewing her performance metrics. Marginal success, Rodriguez. You're operating at the absolute minimum threshold for program continuation. His tone carried professional concern about someone he believed was barely hanging on to special operations training. The other recruits gathered around the pool complex exchanged knowing glances as Elena pulled herself from the water with apparent difficulty. Harrison nodded toward Thompson with satisfied expression, his earlier betting prediction seemingly validated by her obvious struggle with the demanding requirements. That's how someone looks when they're in over their head, Thompson commented loud enough for nearby participants to hear, his words designed to emphasize the performance gap he believed existed between Elena's capabilities and the group's more qualified members. Elena moved to the designated recovery area, wrapping herself in the provided towel while maintaining the appearance of someone genuinely exhausted by challenges that had tested her limits. In reality, her cardiovascular conditioning from years of elite operations meant the exercises had barely elevated her heart rate above resting levels. Master Chief Kowalski approached her position, his weathered face showing the kind of paternal concern experienced instructors developed for recruits they believed were pushing dangerous boundaries. Rodriguez, he said quietly, his voice carrying genuine worry about her continuation prospects. You're showing determination, but determination alone isn't enough for what's coming next. The observation was intended as gentle guidance toward accepting program withdrawal before facing exercises that would expose what he perceived as fundamental capability gaps. Elena recognized the kindness in his approach while understanding that her mission required continued participation despite apparent struggles. What's coming next, Master Chief? She asked with deliberate uncertainty, allowing worry to creep into her voice as she played the role of someone anxious about increasingly demanding challenges. Her question drew sympathetic glances from nearby instructors who interpreted her concern as realistic self-assessment. Kowalski's expression grew more serious as he consulted his training schedule clipboard. Night insertion exercises, he replied, his tone suggesting someone preparing a struggling recruit for reality. Complete darkness, equipment failures, navigation without visual references. Failure rate typically runs 80%, even among candidates who've performed well during daylight training. The statistics hung in the air like a death sentence for most participants' aspirations. Elena absorbed the information while maintaining her facade of someone intimidated by challenges she had actually mastered during countless nocturnal operations across hostile territories where detection meant mission failure or death. Harrison positioned himself near the equipment return area, his confidence radiating as he observed Elena's apparent distress about the upcoming night exercises. This is where the real separation happens, he announced to his gathered companions, his prediction carrying absolute certainty about her inevitable elimination from the program. Elena began removing her specialized gear with deliberate uncertainty, her movements suggesting someone unfamiliar with equipment she had used extensively during classified operations that remained above these recruits' clearance levels. The performance required constant attention to avoid revealing technical expertise that would compromise her cover. Instructor Williams emerged from the control station carrying additional evaluation forms, his expression showing the kind of professional resignation that came from observing marginal performers attempting challenges beyond their demonstrated capabilities. Night exercises began at 1900 hours, he announced to the assembled group. Thompson approached Elena's position near the equipment racks, his expression showing what he probably intended as helpful concern but came across as condescending advice. Maybe you should consider whether this is really the right program for you, he suggested, his tone implying someone offering sensible guidance to a person clearly operating beyond reasonable limits. Elena looked up from her gear, with carefully crafted uncertainty, her expression suggesting someone genuinely questioning their ability to continue despite personal determination to succeed. The performance drew nods of understanding from nearby recruits who interpreted her apparent self-doubt as realistic assessment of obvious limitations. "I've come this far," she replied quietly, her voice carrying the kind of stubborn determination that instructors simultaneously admired and worried about in recruits who refused to acknowledge when they were outmatched by training requirements. Davis shook his head in apparent disbelief at her persistence, his comment directed toward Martinez, but audible to Elena's position. "Night exercises are going to destroy her. She barely made it through daylight training with full visibility and optimal conditions." The prediction carried unanimous agreement from the surrounding group, their confidence in forecasting her failure reinforced by instructor concerns and accumulated evidence of her struggling performance throughout the day's progressively challenging exercises. Elena gathered her equipment while maintaining the appearance of someone dreading the approaching night training that would test skills in complete darkness. In reality, she had conducted countless nocturnal operations where success depended on navigation and equipment management under far more demanding conditions than any training scenario. The equipment room buzzed with nervous energy as recruits prepared for exercises that would eliminate most remaining candidates before morning. Elena moved among them quietly, her mind already analyzing the night challenges while maintaining her facade of uncertainty about demands that exceeded her apparent capabilities. Master Chief Kowalski lingered near the training schedule display, his experienced eyes following Elena's movement as she prepared for what he clearly believed would be her final exercise before inevitable program withdrawal. His expression showed reluctant respect for her determination, combined with professional concern about her safety during demanding nocturnal training. The approaching darkness would bring the most challenging phase of her deception, as night exercises would make it exponentially more difficult to appear struggling, while secretly evaluating training effectiveness and leadership development among the remaining candidates. 22 skeptical recruits and experienced instructors would be watching in complete darkness, waiting for confirmation of their assumptions about her inevitable failure when faced with elite training requirements that separated special operations candidates from conventional military personnel. Darkness settled over the Naval Special Warfare Training Center like a heavy blanket, transforming the familiar pool complex into an alien landscape of shadows and uncertainty. Elena stood among the remaining 19 recruits, each equipped with specialized night operation gear that would determine who possessed the mental toughness necessary for elite military service under the most demanding conditions. The overhead lights had been extinguished completely, leaving only the faint glow of emergency markers to indicate general facility boundaries. Elena recognized the deliberate psychological pressure of operating in complete darkness, having experienced similar conditions during classified operations where enemy contact was a constant threat. Instructor Jenkins positioned himself near the barely visible control station, his voice carrying across the darkened facility with authority designed to penetrate the uncertainty that darkness created in even experienced candidates. "Night insertion exercise parameters are non-negotiable," he announced, his tone serious enough to elevate tension among already nervous participants. Elena adjusted her night vision equipment with deliberate uncertainty, her movements suggesting someone struggling with gear she had mastered during countless nocturnal operations across hostile territories. The specialized equipment felt familiar in her hands, identical to systems she had used during missions that remained classified above these recruits' security clearance levels. Harrison positioned himself near what had been the equipment staging area, his earlier confidence noticeably diminished by the complete darkness that eliminated visual references he had relied upon during daylight training. "Think Rodriguez has any chance in conditions like this?" he asked Thompson, his voice lacking its usual certainty about her inevitable failure. Thompson's response came with less conviction than his earlier predictions, the darkness clearly affecting his comfort level despite his demonstrated competence during daylight exercises. "She barely made it through basic training," he replied, though his tone suggested someone less certain about outcomes when visibility was eliminated entirely. The night exercise required navigation through an underwater obstacle course using only tactile references and compass bearings, skills that separated candidates capable of operating under extreme stress from those who depended on optimal conditions for basic performance. Elena had completed similar challenges during actual combat operations where detection meant mission failure or death. Master Chief Kowalski's voice emerged from the darkness near the monitoring position, his words carrying additional weight in the absence of visual confirmation of his location. Complete darkness eliminates most candidate advantages, he announced to the assembled group. Success depends entirely on fundamental skills and mental discipline under pressure. Elena could hear nervous breathing from nearby recruits as the reality of operating without visual references registered among participants who had relied on sight for every previous challenge. The psychological pressure was deliberate and effective, designed to reveal which candidates possessed the mental toughness necessary for special operations under adverse conditions. Rodriguez, first participant, Jenkins called out, his voice directing her toward the water entry point that was barely visible as a darker shadow against the facility's emergency lighting. Equipment check complete. Begin descent on my mark. Elena approached the water with calculated hesitation, her movements suggesting someone intimidated by challenges that had tested her limits during daylight and would now prove impossible under complete darkness. She could navigate this course flawlessly without any visual references, but her mission required continued mediocrity that wouldn't raise suspicions. The water felt even more familiar in darkness, her body automatically adjusting to conditions she had experienced during countless nocturnal operations where success depended on tactile navigation and equipment management without benefit of artificial lighting or visual confirmation of progress. She began the underwater navigation with deliberate uncertainty, her movements appearing less confident than they actually were, while still maintaining forward progress through obstacles she could identify through touch and spatial memory. Above the surface, she could sense the instructor's heightened tension about her safety. The darkness amplified every sound as remaining recruits waited their turns, each participant aware that night exercises eliminated most candidates who had performed adequately during daylight training. Elena could hear whispered conversations expressing doubt about everyone's ability to complete challenges that seemed impossible without visual references. Davis positioned himself near what he hoped was the equipment monitoring area, his voice carrying clearly across the darkened facility despite his attempt at discretion. "No way she makes it through this," he predicted to Martinez, though his tone lacked the confidence of earlier assessments made under optimal lighting conditions. Elena completed the first checkpoint successfully, but with apparent difficulty, her performance suggesting someone working at maximum capability while darkness added exponential complexity to already demanding requirements. The carefully calibrated struggle reinforced assumptions about her limited night operation experience. Instructor Williams monitored her progress through specialized equipment, his voice providing guidance that Elena didn't actually need, but accepted with apparent gratitude. Rodriguez maintained steady breathing. "Trust your equipment and training." His encouragement was intended for someone he believed was operating beyond comfortable limits. The second checkpoint required complex equipment manipulation while maintaining precise depth control in complete darkness, skills that Elena had perfected during classified operations where mistakes resulted in mission compromise or personnel casualties. She performed the task competently, but without the fluid efficiency that would suggest extensive night operation experience. Harrison listened carefully to Elena's progress reports, his earlier predictions about her failure becoming less certain as darkness affected his own confidence about navigating similar challenges. "Maybe the darkness levels the playing field somehow," he commented uncertainly to nearby companions who were equally intimidated by the complete absence of visual references. The psychological pressure of operating in absolute darkness was affecting every participant differently, revealing character traits and stress responses that daylight training had concealed. Elena observed these reactions carefully while maintaining her facade of someone struggling with challenges that exceeded her demonstrated capabilities. Master Chief Kowalski made detailed notes despite the darkness, his experience allowing him to evaluate performance through audio cues and timing analysis rather than visual observation. His professional assessment continued documenting concerns about a recruit who appeared to be barely surviving exercises that would become exponentially more difficult. The night exercise progression was testing every aspect of Elena's deception as darkness made it increasingly challenging to appear struggling while secretly evaluating training effectiveness and candidate character under the most demanding conditions these future SEALs would face during their careers. Elena emerged from the final night exercise checkpoint with carefully orchestrated exhaustion, her breathing deliberately labored to suggest someone who had barely survived the most demanding training phase of her military career. The darkness that had challenged every other participant provided perfect cover for maintaining her deception while completing navigation that should have been impossible for someone with her supposed experience level. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the pool complex as Instructor Jenkins reviewed her performance through specialized monitoring equipment. Completion confirmed. Rodriguez, he announced, his voice carrying surprise that she had successfully navigated challenges that eliminated most candidates during their first night exercise attempt. The remaining 17 recruits gathered in the dimly lit recovery area, their faces showing varying degrees of shock that Elena had not only survived but completed the night navigation course. Harrison stared at her position near the equipment return station, his earlier confidence about predicting her failure replaced by confused uncertainty about what he had just witnessed. "How did she do that?" Thompson whispered to Davis, his voice betraying genuine bewilderment about Elena's successful completion of exercises that had seemed impossible for someone who had struggled through basic daylight training. His assumption about her limitations was being challenged by performance that didn't match his expectations. Elena wrapped herself in the provided towel while maintaining the appearance of someone genuinely depleted by challenges that had tested every limit of her supposed capabilities. In reality, the night exercises had been routine compared to nocturnal operations she had conducted in hostile territories where enemy contact was an imminent threat. Master Chief Kowalski approached her position with an expression of reluctant respect, mixed with continued concern about her program continuation prospects. "Rodriguez," he said quietly, his voice carrying acknowledgement of her unexpected success. "That was impressive persistence. But tomorrow's exercises will make tonight look like basic training." The warning was intended to prepare her for challenges that would exceed even the demanding night navigation she had just completed. Elena absorbed the information while maintaining her facade of someone intimidated by the prospect of facing even more difficult requirements despite her surprising success under adverse conditions. Davis positioned himself near the performance evaluation board, his expression showing disbelief as Jenkins posted completion times that confirmed Elena's successful navigation through obstacles that had defeated candidates with superior daylight performance records. The numbers contradicted every assumption he had made about her capabilities. "Maybe she got lucky," Martinez suggested to nearby recruits, his tone indicating someone searching for explanations that would reconcile Elena's success with their established beliefs about her limitations. "Luck might not hold out when the exercises get really difficult." Elena began removing her night operation gear with deliberate uncertainty, her movements suggesting someone still processing the reality of having survived challenges that had seemed beyond her demonstrated skill level. The performance required careful balance between showing surprise at her own success while not revealing the expertise that made it possible. Instructor Williams emerged from the monitoring station carrying updated evaluation forms, his expression showing professional puzzlement about a recruit whose night performance contradicted every indicator from her daylight training sessions. "Rodriguez," he called out, his voice carrying curiosity about her unexpected competence. Elena approached his position with calculated uncertainty, her expression suggesting someone as surprised as everyone else about successfully completing exercises that should have been impossible given her apparent limitations during previous training phases. "Your navigation accuracy was exceptional," Williams observed, reviewing his monitoring data with obvious confusion about performance metrics that didn't align with her struggling daylight attempts. "How do you explain the dramatic improvement under more difficult conditions?" The question was clearly intended to understand whether her success resulted from hidden capabilities or simply fortunate circumstances that might not be repeatable during future exercises. Elena recognized the professional curiosity behind his inquiry while understanding that her response would influence continued program participation. "I guess I focus better when I can't see distractions," she replied with deliberate uncertainty, offering an explanation that was technically plausible while avoiding any suggestion of advanced training or extensive night operation experience that would compromise her cover identity. Harrison gathered his equipment while shaking his head in apparent disbelief at Elena's unexpected success during exercises that had challenged his own confidence despite superior daylight performance. "This doesn't make sense," he commented to Thompson, his voice carrying frustration about predictions that had proven completely wrong. The night exercise results were creating cognitive dissonance among recruits who had confidently predicted Elena's failure based on her apparent struggles during daylight training. Her success was forcing them to reconsider assumptions about her capabilities while raising questions about their own assessment skills. Thompson approached Elena's position near the gear return area, his expression showing grudging acknowledgement of her unexpected competence combined with continued skepticism about whether the performance was sustainable under increasingly demanding conditions. "Good job tonight," he said with obvious reluctance, his tone suggesting someone offering recognition he didn't want to give but couldn't reasonably withhold given her documented success. "Tomorrow's exercises are supposed to be even harder, though." Elena accepted the acknowledgement with appropriate humility, her response suggesting someone grateful for recognition while remaining uncertain about her ability to repeat the performance under more challenging circumstances. The careful balance maintained her cover while acknowledging the shift in group dynamics. Master Chief Kowalski lingered near the training schedule display, his experienced eyes following Elena's movement as she prepared to leave the facility. His expression showed professional confusion about a recruit whose capabilities seemed to emerge only under the most adverse conditions, defying conventional training assessment patterns. The approaching dawn would bring the final phase of training exercises designed to eliminate all but the most qualified candidates before graduation. Elena's unexpected night performance had complicated everyone's assumptions while providing valuable insight into how stress revealed character among future special operations personnel. 18 skeptical recruits and experienced instructors were now questioning their ability to predict performance under extreme conditions, though none suspected that their struggling recruit was actually an experienced commander evaluating their training program effectiveness from an unprecedented perspective. Dawn broke across Coronado with the kind of crisp clarity that promised a day of final reckonings. The remaining 17 recruits assembled in the main briefing room, each aware that today's exercises would determine who earned the right to continue in the most elite military training program in the world. Elena sat among them with carefully maintained uncertainty, though she knew exactly what the final assessment would entail. Admiral Richardson himself entered the briefing room precisely at 0600 hours, his presence immediately commanding absolute attention from every participant. Elena felt a moment of concern about maintaining her cover in front of the officer who had personally assigned her this undercover evaluation mission, but his expression revealed nothing as his eyes swept across the assembled candidates. "Today marks your final assessment," the Admiral announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overseen countless such evaluations throughout his distinguished career. Combat leadership simulation under extreme stress conditions. Historical passage rate is 12%. The statistics landed like physical blows among recruits who had already survived elimination rates that exceeded 80% during previous phases. Elena watched faces around her, noting which participants showed increased nervousness and which maintained confidence despite the sobering mathematics of their survival odds. Harrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible tension as the reality of 12% success rates registered. Even his confidence had limits when confronted with numbers that meant only 2 candidates from their current group would likely advance to graduation. The final exercise simulates real-world crisis leadership. Admiral Richardson continued, his expression serious, as he outlined parameters that would test every aspect of their training under maximum pressure conditions. Equipment failures, casualty scenarios, and time-critical decision-making under hostile fire simulation. Elena absorbed the briefing while maintaining her facade of someone intimidated by challenges that represented the culmination of everything she had supposedly learned during the program. In reality, she had faced similar situations during actual combat operations where the stakes involved real lives rather than training evaluations. Thompson leaned toward Martinez, his voice barely audible as he expressed doubts that had been growing since Elena's unexpected night exercise success. "Think Rodriguez can handle real leadership pressure," he whispered, though his tone suggested someone less certain about predicting her performance than he had been previously. The question hung between them as both recruits struggled to reconcile Elena's surprising night navigation competence with their established assumptions about her overall capabilities. Her success under adverse conditions had introduced uncertainty into their assessment framework. Master Chief Kowalski distributed detailed scenario briefings that outlined the crisis leadership challenges each participant would face during individual evaluation sessions. Elena reviewed the materials while maintaining appropriate concentration, though she recognized several scenario elements from actual operations she had commanded during her years of active service. "Rodriguez," Admiral Richardson called out suddenly, his attention focusing on her position with what appeared to be routine curiosity about candidate preparation levels. "Have you considered your approach to managing personnel under extreme stress conditions?" The question was clearly designed to assess leadership philosophy and tactical thinking among candidates who would soon face simulated versions of challenges that define special operations effectiveness. Elena recognized the importance of her response while needing to maintain her cover identity. "Focus on mission accomplishment while protecting team safety, sir," she replied with deliberate simplicity, offering leadership principles that were fundamentally sound while avoiding the sophisticated analysis that would suggest extensive command experience beyond basic military training. Davis exchanged glances with nearby recruits, his expression showing continued skepticism about Elena's ability to translate theoretical understanding into effective performance under the crushing pressure of simulated combat leadership responsibilities. The briefing continued with detailed explanations of evaluation criteria that would determine which candidates possess the combination of technical competence, decision-making ability, and leadership presence necessary for special operations command responsibilities. Elena listened carefully while maintaining her appearance of concentrated attention. Harrison raised his hand with characteristic determination to demonstrate engagement, though his question revealed uncertainty that hadn't been present during earlier training phases. "Sir, what percentage of candidates typically experience complete scenario failure during the leadership assessment?" Admiral Richardson's response carried the weight of experience gleaned from observing countless evaluations under similar conditions. "Approximately 60% experience total mission failure," he replied matter-of-factly. "Another 28% achieve marginal success with significant casualties or objective compromise." The mathematics were brutal and unforgiving, leaving only 12% who demonstrated competence sufficient for advancement to actual special operations assignments. Elena watched the psychological impact register among recruits who were beginning to understand that survival, to this point, guaranteed nothing about final selection. Thompson's confidence continued eroding as the scope of leadership challenges became clear through the Admiral's detailed briefing. Managing equipment failures while coordinating personnel under simulated enemy fire was exponentially more complex than any previous exercise they had attempted. Elena began mentally preparing for the leadership simulation while maintaining her facade of someone uncertain about handling responsibilities that exceeded her demonstrated capabilities. The challenge would be appearing to struggle with command decisions while secretly evaluating how stress revealed character among the remaining candidates. Master Chief Kowalski announced the individual assessment schedule, with Elena assigned to the third evaluation slot that would place her performance under maximum scrutiny from instructors who have been tracking her unexpected progression through increasingly difficult training phases. The morning sun climbed higher as recruits dispersed to prepare for evaluations that would determine their military futures within the next 6 hours. Elena moved among them quietly, her mind already analyzing the leadership challenges while maintaining the appearance of someone dreading responsibilities that seemed beyond her apparent capabilities. 16 other candidates would face identical scenarios designed to reveal which participants possessed the rare combination of technical skill, mental toughness, and leadership presence that separated special operations officers from conventional military personnel. Elena's true test would be maintaining her deception while secret evaluating training effectiveness under the most demanding conditions possible. The stakes had reached their absolute peak, with her cover identity and mission success both depending on a performance that would satisfy evaluation requirements without revealing the command experience that made her success inevitable. The combat leadership simulation chamber buzzed with activity as technicians completed final preparations for evaluations that would determine which candidates possessed the rare qualities necessary for Special Operations Command. Elena waited in the designated staging area, maintaining her expression of nervous anticipation while her experienced mind automatically analyzed the scenario parameters she would soon face. Thompson had just emerged from his evaluation session, his face pale and expression showing the kind of shock that came from experiencing complete mission failure under simulated combat conditions. His confidence had been systematically dismantled during 45 minutes of cascading equipment failures and personnel casualties that exceeded his ability to manage effectively. Total disaster, he muttered to Davis, his voice carrying the hollow tone of someone whose assumptions about their leadership capabilities had been thoroughly shattered. 3 team casualties, mission objective failed, equipment compromised. I couldn't keep up with the decision-making requirements. Elena observed his traumatized expression while maintaining appropriate sympathy for someone who had clearly been overwhelmed by challenges that revealed fundamental gaps between confidence and actual competence under extreme pressure. His failure reinforced the 12% success statistics Admiral Richardson had outlined. Harrison positioned himself near the evaluation chamber entrance, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible anxiety as he awaited his turn to face scenarios that had systematically defeated candidates with superior technical skills and demonstrated leadership potential during previous training phases. Rodriguez, third candidate, called out Master Chief Kowalski, gesturing toward Elena's position with the kind of resigned expression instructors developed when observing recruits they expected to struggle with demands that exceeded their demonstrated capabilities. Final assessment begins immediately. Elena approached the simulation chamber with calculated uncertainty, her movements suggesting someone intimidated by responsibilities that would test every limit of her supposed leadership experience. She could see the complex monitoring equipment and scenario control systems that would create the most realistic combat conditions possible without actual enemy contact. The chamber door sealed behind her with mechanical finality, leaving Elena alone with simulation technicians who would orchestrate cascading crises designed to overwhelm decision-making capabilities and reveal which candidates possess the mental toughness necessary for Special Operations Command under hostile conditions. Scenario initiation in 30 seconds. Announced the control booth through overhead speakers, the countdown marking her transition from recruit to simulated team leader responsible for mission success and personnel safety under maximum stress conditions. Elena took her position at the central command station while maintaining her facade of someone uncertain about handling responsibilities that exceeded her apparent experience level. In reality, she had commanded similar operations during actual combat, where equipment failures and casualty management decisions affected real lives rather than training evaluations. The simulation erupted into chaos with multiple equipment malfunctions occurring simultaneously, while simulated enemy fire created time pressure that demanded immediate tactical decisions. Elena recognized the deliberate complexity designed to overwhelm candidates who lacked extensive leadership experience under combat conditions. Team Alpha reports communications failure. Announced the first simulated crisis through her headset. Team Bravo has sustained casualties and requires immediate medical evacuation. Mission timeline compromised. Enemy contact imminent. Elena began managing the cascading emergencies with carefully controlled competence. Her responses suggesting someone working at maximum capability while internally operating well within her extensive command experience. Each decision required balance between mission success and maintaining her cover identity. She coordinated medical evacuation procedures while establishing alternative communication protocols, her actions demonstrating leadership capability without revealing the fluid expertise that would suggest years of actual combat command experience. The performance required constant attention to avoid exposing her true background. Additional equipment failures cascaded through the simulation as Elena maintained tactical coordination under increasing pressure from multiple emergency scenarios occurring simultaneously. She had managed identical situations during real operations, though today required appearing challenged by responsibilities she had mastered decades ago. The monitoring booth observed her performance through specialized equipment designed to evaluate decision-making patterns, stress responses, and leadership effectiveness under conditions that replicated actual special operations demands. Elena could sense their growing surprise as she maintained mission progress despite overwhelming scenario complexity. Enemy contact confirmed. Announced the next crisis escalation. Team Charlie compromised. Extraction timeline critical. Multiple casualty reports incoming. Elena adapted to the evolving tactical situation with measured responses that showed competence without revealing the instinctive expertise that made her decisions appear effortless despite simulation pressure designed to overwhelm candidate capabilities. Her performance suggested someone rising to meet extraordinary challenges rather than someone operating within comfortable parameters. Mission objective achieved. Announced the control booth 45 minutes later, their tone carrying surprise that reflected successful completion rates among only 12% of candidates. All personnel accounted for. Equipment integrity maintained. Outstanding leadership performance under extreme conditions. Elena emerged from the simulation chamber with appropriate exhaustion, her breathing deliberately elevated to suggest someone who had been pushed to absolute limits during the most demanding evaluation of her military career. The performance maintained her cover while documenting leadership capability that exceeded instructor expectations. Master Chief Kowalski waited outside the chamber with his evaluation clipboard, his expression showing professional amazement about a recruit whose performance contradicted every assumption about her leadership potential based on previous training struggles. Outstanding results, Rodriguez, he said quietly, his voice carrying genuine respect for someone who had demonstrated exceptional competence under conditions that had systematically defeated candidates with superior technical skills and apparent confidence levels. Elena accepted the recognition with appropriate humility while maintaining her facade of someone surprised by successfully handling responsibilities that had seemed beyond her demonstrated capabilities. The careful balance preserved her cover while acknowledging the significant shift in instructor assessment. Admiral Richardson emerged from the observation area, his expression unreadable as he approached Elena's position near the chamber exit. His presence commanded immediate attention from nearby personnel who recognized the significance of direct command involvement in individual evaluation results. The moment of truth was approaching as Elena faced the officer who had assigned her this undercover mission, while surrounded by instructors and candidates who remained unaware of her true identity and extensive command experience. Admiral Richardson approached Elena's position with measured steps, his expression revealing nothing as he studied the recruit who had just delivered an exceptional leadership performance that contradicted every assumption about her capabilities. The remaining candidates and instructors gathered nearby, sensing the significance of direct command involvement in individual evaluation results. "Rodriguez," the admiral said quietly, his voice carrying an authority that commanded absolute attention from everyone within hearing range. "Your leadership simulation results are quite remarkable. Perhaps we should discuss your background more thoroughly." Elena maintained her facade of uncertain humility while recognizing the carefully phrased statement that would allow her to reveal her true identity without compromising the evaluation mission's objectives. She could sense the growing tension among observers who were witnessing an unprecedented level of command attention. Master Chief Kowalski stepped forward with his evaluation clipboard, his expression showing professional confusion about a recruit whose exceptional performance under extreme pressure had shattered every assessment framework he had developed during decades of training program oversight. "Sir," he addressed the admiral with obvious bewilderment, "Rodriguez exceeded every performance metric during the leadership simulation. Her tactical decision-making and personnel management capabilities suggest extensive command experience that doesn't appear in her training record." Elena recognized the moment had arrived for revelation, though the transformation would shock everyone who had witnessed her struggling through basic requirements while secretly evaluating their training program effectiveness from an unprecedented perspective. Admiral Richardson nodded slowly, his expression indicating someone prepared to address the confusion that Elena's exceptional performance had created among instructors and candidates who had confidently predicted her failure throughout the entire training cycle. "There's something you all should understand about Recruit Rodriguez," the admiral announced, his voice carrying across the simulation area with authority that commanded complete attention from every person present. Her actual identity and background. Elena straightened to attention with fluid precision that immediately transformed her entire bearing from uncertain recruit to experienced military commander. The change was dramatic and unmistakable, revealing years of leadership training that had been carefully concealed beneath her facade of inexperience. Harrison's mouth fell open as he witnessed the physical transformation that occurred when Elena abandoned her recruit posture and assumed the commanding presence that had led SEAL teams through classified operations across multiple theaters of conflict. His confident predictions about her limitations had been completely wrong. "Allow me to introduce Commander Elena Vasquez," Admiral Richardson continued, his words landing like explosions among the assembled group. "SEAL Team 6 Commanding Officer, Silver Star recipient. 23 years of distinguished service, including classified operations that remain above your security clearance levels." The revelation created absolute silence among recruits who had mocked and dismissed her throughout the training program. Thompson stared in complete disbelief, his jaw working soundlessly as he processed the reality that their struggling recruit was actually an elite commander with combat experience that exceeded anything they would encounter during their careers. Master Chief Kowalski's clipboard slipped from his fingers and clattered on the concrete floor, the sound echoing through the stunned silence that followed the admiral's announcement. His weathered face showed the kind of shock that came from realizing he had been unknowingly evaluated by someone whose qualifications exceeded his own. "Commander Vasquez has been conducting an undercover assessment of our training program effectiveness and leadership development protocols," Admiral Richardson explained, his tone indicating someone providing necessary context for the unprecedented situation they were witnessing. Elena stepped forward with the natural authority that had been concealed throughout her time among them, her voice carrying the command presence that had led special operations teams through some of the military's most challenging missions during her distinguished career. "Your training program demonstrates exceptional technical competency," she announced, addressing the assembled instructors with professional respect for their expertise. However, several areas require attention regarding assumption-based assessment and candidate support during stress phases. Davis simply stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the confident commander standing before them with the uncertain recruit who had asked basic questions and appeared to struggle with equipment she had obviously mastered years ago during her initial military training. The betting pools and dismissive comments that had characterized their treatment of her throughout the program now seemed impossibly naive given the revelation of her true identity and extensive combat experience. Harrison's face showed the kind of embarrassment that came from realizing his confident superiority had been directed towards someone whose qualifications dwarfed his own. Martinez looked around the group with growing understanding about the professional lesson they had just received regarding assumptions and judgment based on appearances rather than demonstrated performance under pressure. Their confident predictions had been systematically proven wrong by someone conducting evaluation from within their ranks. Commander Vasquez maintained her professional demeanor while addressing the instructors who had genuinely tried to help what they believed was a struggling recruit throughout the demanding training program. Your concern for candidate welfare was exemplary and reflects positively on program leadership standards. Master Chief Kowalski slowly retrieved his clipboard from the floor, his expression showing reluctant admiration for the sophisticated evaluation methodology that had provided unprecedented insight into training program effectiveness from the participant perspective rather than administrative oversight. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the facility as Elena concluded her remarks. Having successfully completed the most comprehensive training assessment in the program's history, while maintaining complete deception until the critical revelation moment that transformed everyone's understanding. If this story moved you, please drop a comment about your favorite moment or character, or share if you've witnessed similar hidden strength revealed under pressure in your own experience. Sometimes the most capable people are the ones we least expect. Admiral Richardson dismissed the assembled group with instructions about maintaining confidentiality regarding the evaluation methodology, though the lesson about assumptions and judgment would remain with every participant throughout their military careers. Elena had proven that true leadership often emerged from unexpected sources when tested under the most demanding conditions possible.